All right, so this deep dive is all about you.
Yeah.
It's about you and better work. And
Yeah.
you're talking before we hit record, and you shared some interesting stuff from this book by Timothy Gallwey called The Inner Game of Work.
Oh, yeah.
And I can totally see why it caught your eye, you know? It's all about breaking through those inner barriers to doing our best work.
Right.
And feeling good about it, too.
Yeah.
So it's like this shortcut to productivity and satisfaction all in one Twitter.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating about Gallwey's approach is that it comes from his work with athletes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like tennis and golf, you know, where improvement is really obvious and measurable.
Yeah.
So applying these ideas to work is kind of radical. Like it really flips the script on how we usually think about learning and coaching.
I like that.
In a professional setting.
Flipping the script.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And it makes me think about how we get so caught up in the instructions and procedures at work.
Right.
And we forget to tap into our own natural abilities.
Yeah.
And to trust ourselves. So tell me more about this inner game stuff.
Okay.
Like, Gallwey didn't just come up with this overnight, right?
No, not at all. He's been applying the inner game to businesses like AT&T, Coca-Cola, IBM for like over 20 years.
Wow.
But it all started with athletes.
Okay.
He was fascinated by like how their performance would vary even within the same game.
Right.
The difference between your best and worst performance isn't always just about talent.
Yeah.
Right? There's something else going on there.
You're right. Like, I've definitely experienced that myself. You know those days when everything clicks?
Yeah.
Those days when you feel like you can't do anything right?
Totally.
So is that where this idea of two selves comes in?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Gallwey realized there's this battle going on
Yeah.
between what he calls self-1 and self-2.
Okay.
So self-1 is that overthinking. Judgmental inner critic, we all know, and maybe don't love.
Right.
Always second-guessing, putting pressure on us.
Right.
And then there's self-2, which is all about our potential.
Okay.
Just waiting to be unleashed.
I like that. Unleashing the potential.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this applies to work. You know, we've all got that inner critic telling us we're not good enough.
Yeah.
We're going to mess up. We should just give up.
Totally.
So is Gallwey saying we need to silence that inner critic completely?
It's not about silencing it so much as understanding its role. That inner critic self-1, it actually thinks it's helping by giving us all these instructions and warnings.
Yeah.
But the truth is it's creating interference. It's like someone whispering doubts and criticisms in your ear while you're trying to work.
Right.
It's no wonder we make mistakes and struggle to perform at our best.
Wow, yeah, that's a really helpful way to think about it.
Right.
So instead of trying to fight that inner critic, what does Gallwey suggest we do?
He's all about minimizing those instructions and directions that self-1 loves to give.
Right.
Instead, he wants us to cultivate awareness of self-2. That part of us that already knows how to do things well. It's about trusting our natural abilities and getting out of our own way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But I'm wondering how this actually plays out, like in real life situations.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of how Gallwey helps people tap into that self-2 and quiet down that inner critic?
He uses some really fascinating examples from his work with tennis players.
Okay.
So imagine this. Instead of bombarding a student with technical instruction on how to improve their backhand, he would simply ask them to just observe the ball.
Just observe.
Yeah.
Sounds simple.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's not as easy as it sounds.
Well.
But I can see how that shift in focus away from overthinking and towards simply observing could make a difference.
Exactly. It's a way to shift away from self-1's chatter.
Okay.
And allow self-2 to kind of take over. And what's amazing is that this often leads to natural improvement.
Wow.
Without even consciously trying.
That's incredible. It makes me think about those times when I've been so focused on trying to do something perfectly that I end up messing it up even more.
Yeah.
You know?
The harder you try.
Yeah. The harder I try, the worse it gets.
The worse it gets. Yeah.
So
it's the classic paralysis by analysis trap.
Oh, yeah?
Gallwey would say that's self-1 running the show.
Oh, that's self-1. Okay.
There's another tennis example.
Okay.
Where he would ask students to focus on their movements but without judgment.
Okay.
They still made mistakes, of course.
Right.
But their response to those mistakes was different.
Yeah.
Less internal panic, more curiosity.
Interesting. It makes me think about how
Yeah.
we get so caught up in beating ourselves up over mistakes that we miss the opportunity to learn from them.
Yeah.
So is it about shifting from a mindset of avoiding mistakes to embracing mistakes as learning opportunities?
Yeah, you got it. It's about creating that psychological safety to experiment and learn, even if it means making mistakes.
Right.
And Gallwey would even go a step further and ask the student what they wanted to improve.
Wow.
Giving them that choice not only led to more engaged learning, but also a greater sense of ownership over the outcome.
That's such a different approach than the way we typically approach learning and development at work.
Totally.
You know, it's always about following instructions, meeting expectations, avoiding mistakes at all costs.
Yeah.
But what if, like you said, we shifted from a training mindset to a learning mindset?
That's the invitation Gallwey is offering. To move away from that rigid type-down approach and toward a more learner-centered approach that honors each person's unique experience and potential.
I think that's a really powerful idea.
Right.
Especially in today's rapidly changing work environment.
Totally.
So how did Gallwey take these radical ideas from the tennis court into the corporate world?
Well,
tell me about his work with AT&T.
Okay.
That was during a time of major cultural shifts.
Huge cultural shift. Yeah, AT&T was transitioning away from that old ma-bell culture where employees were treated like family. So it was cozy.
Right.
But it also made them resistant to change when competition forced them to become more performance-driven.
It's interesting to think about the impact
Yeah.
of those cultural shifts on employees' internal landscapes, right?
Totally.
Like, on one hand, they had that sense of security and belonging.
Yeah.
But then suddenly there's this pressure to perform or risk losing their jobs.
Right.
I could see how that could create a lot of inner turmoil.
Absolutely. And that's kind of an environment where self-one thrives.
Yeah.
That fear of job loss, that pressure to conform.
Right.
It can really stifle creativity and risk-taking.
So Gallwey is brought in
Yeah.
to consult at AT&T during this tumultuous time. What did they have him do?
Well, they started with something that seems pretty unexpected: telephone operators.
Really?
Yeah, the goal was to improve their courtesy ratings without sacrificing productivity.
So how did he apply those inner game principles to something as routine as answering phones?
Well, instead of drilling them on scripts and procedures, he focused on helping them shift their internal state.
Okay.
He taught them techniques for managing their attention and finding moments of learning and connection within the calls themselves.
You know, it's funny how we think of those kinds of jobs as being soul-crushing and mundane, but Gallwey is saying there's always an opportunity to find meaning, even enjoyment in our work, no matter what we do.
It's all about finding those little sparks of joy and purpose that make the work feel worthwhile.
I love that.
Okay.
So what happened with those AT&T operators?
Well, the results were pretty remarkable.
Okay.
Not only did courtesy ratings go up, but stress and boredom went down.
Really?
And here's the key part. Operators reported feeling more empowered because they were given the choice of whether or not to use these techniques.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It wasn't about forcing them to be nice.
Yeah.
It was about giving them the tools to manage their own inner state. To create a more positive experience for themselves and for the people they were talking to.
It really highlights the power of choice and autonomy.
It does. It makes me wonder how many of us are just going through the motions at work, feeling stuck and uninspired, when we actually have the power to change our experience from the inside out.
That's a great question to ponder.
Okay.
And it leads us into another fascinating concept from Gallwey's work.
Yeah.
The idea of mobility.
Mobility.
Yeah, he defines it as the ability to move in any desired direction without self-constraint.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Right.
But I'm not sure I fully grasp what it means.
Okay.
In a practical sense.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Are you truly steering your work? Yeah. Or are you just reacting to external pressures and demands?
Right.
Are you proactively choosing your direction?
Yeah.
Or are you stuck in a rut, following the same old patterns and routines?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, myself included, probably fall into that second category more often than we'd like to admit. We get so caught up in the day-to-day grind.
Right.
We forget to step back and ask ourselves, where am I going? Is this really what I want?
Yeah. And that's where Gallwey's concept of performance momentum comes in.
Okay.
It's all those habitual actions we do without thinking.
Right.
Often dictated by external forces.
Yeah.
Rather than our own conscious choices.
Yeah.
It's like being on autopilot. Just going through the motions without really being present or engaged.
That's definitely hitting home for me.
Yeah.
I can see how that performance momentum can keep us stuck.
Right.
In a job or career that's no longer fulfilling.
Totally.
Even if we consciously desire something different.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from that autopilot?
Well, Gallwey provides a framework for achieving what he calls mobility.
Right.
Breaking free from that performance momentum and reclaiming our power to choose our own direction.
Okay.
And he says the first step is to acknowledge that you can move in any desired direction.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you have choices.
Right.
Even if they're not immediately obvious.
That's a powerful starting point.
Yeah.
It's like giving ourselves permission to dream bigger.
Right.
To imagine possibilities beyond our current limitations.
Exactly. And the next step is to get a clear picture of where you want to go.
Okay.
What does that desired state actually look like? Right. What are the specific details? Visualize it. The more vivid the picture, the more powerful it becomes.
I love that.
Right.
It's like creating a roadmap for our future selves, a destination to aim for.
Totally. So what comes after we've set our sights on that desired destination?
Okay.
Well, the third step is all about flexibility.
Okay.
Be willing to make changes within your change. Recognize that the path to your goal might not always be linear.
Right.
And be open to adjusting course along the way.
So it's about embracing the detours.
Yeah.
And unexpected turns that life throws our way.
Exactly. It's about being adaptable and resourceful, finding creative solutions to challenges, and maintaining that forward momentum even when things get tough.
Okay. I'm definitely feeling more empowered already.
Good.
So what's the fourth?
So the fourth step in Gallwey's framework for achieving mobility is keep your purpose clear.
Okay.
Why are you doing this in the first place? What's the driving force behind your desire for change?
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the how of achieving our goals, but we forget to ask why.
Right.
We're pursuing them.
Exactly. And that why needs to be aligned with your values.
Okay.
With what truly matters to you. Yes. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions, chasing after something that might not ultimately fulfill you.
So it's about making sure our goals are not only achievable, but also meaningful, aligned with our authentic selves.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Right.
What's the final step?
The fifth and final step is all about synchronization.
Okay.
Keep your movement and direction aligned. Make sure your actions are actually taking you toward your goals. Right. It's easy to get sidetracked or distracted, so it's important to regularly check in. Yeah. Make sure you're still on course.
It's like having a compass to guide us.
Exactly.
Right, making sure we're not just wandering aimlessly.
Right.
We're actually heading towards our desired destination.
I remember this framework isn't just for work.
Right.
It applies to any area of life where you're seeking greater freedom and control.
Okay.
Your relationships, your personal goals, your overall well-being. The principles are universal.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
It's like Gallwey's giving us a toolkit for living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
Right.
Both at work and beyond.
Absolutely. And it all starts with that first step.
Yeah.
Recognizing that you have the power to choose your own direction.
Right.
You're not a victim of circumstance. You're the CEO of your own amazing corporation.
I love that analogy.
Right.
So how do we actually break free from that performance momentum in a practical way?
Well, Gallwey introduces this powerful tool that he calls STOP.
Okay.
And it's as simple as it sounds. It's an acronym that stands for stop, think, organize, proceed.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Tell me more about
Yeah.
how this STOP tool works.
It's all about creating space to become conscious of your actions and choices, to shift your perspective and to realign with your goals. It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot and taking back control.
I think a lot of us could really benefit from hitting that pause button more often.
Right.
We get so caught up in the rush of the day that we forget to slow down, breathe, make intentional choices.
And Gallwey gives examples of different types of STOPs.
Okay.
You've got your short STOPs, like taking a few seconds to decide if you really need to answer that ringing phone, or if you should stay focused on your current task. Then there are medium STOPs.
Okay.
Like reflecting on a situation before jumping into action.
Right.
Maybe taking a few minutes to consider the best approach.
Okay.
And then you've got your big STOPs, which are more about taking time for deep reflection and strategic planning. This deep dive we're doing right now is actually a great example of a big STOP.
Interesting.
It's about carving out time to examine your overall direction in work or life, to question those underlying beliefs and assumptions that might be holding you back.
Wow. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right.
It's like zooming out
to
get a wider view of the landscape, to see the forest for the trees.
Right. And you can incorporate these STOPs into your daily routine in all sorts of ways.
Right.
Now,
schedule them throughout the day, maybe before starting a new task, after a meeting, or even at the end of the workday, to create that clear boundary between work and personal life. Experiment and see what works best for you.
Right. What feels most empowering.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these seemingly small shifts in perspective and behavior can have a ripple effect on our overall work experience.
Totally.
It's not about overhauling our entire lives.
Right.
It's about making those intentional choices throughout the day that gradually move us in a more fulfilling direction.
It's about creating a work life that's not only productive, but also joyful and aligned with our true selves. I think that's a goal worth striving for.
I agree. Absolutely.
Right.
This is all starting to feel a lot less like work and a lot more like an exciting adventure.
There you go.
Speaking of which, I'm curious to hear more about how Gallwey's ideas about choice and awareness apply to the realm of coaching. He has a unique perspective. And that as well.
And it's very different from the traditional fix-it approach to coaching. In Gallwey's framework, coaching is not about giving advice or telling people what to do. It's about helping them tap into their own solutions and potential. It's about facilitating their thinking, not doing the thinking for them.
That's a huge shift. So how does that actually play out in a coaching conversation? What are the key differences between Gallwey's approach and more traditional coaching methods?
Well, in traditional coaching, the expert usually has all the answers. But Gallwey flips that script and says the client is the expert on their own life and challenges. The coach's role is to guide them toward their own insights and solutions. And he does that by asking powerful questions that encourage reflection, exploration, and self-discovery.
That's about empowering people to find their own answers. Rather than imposing solutions on them. I can see how that could be incredibly liberating for the person being coached.
Totally.
It's like saying, I trust you. I believe you have the capacity to figure this out.
You're exactly right. It's all about fostering that sense of trust and self-belief.
And Gallwey breaks these coaching conversations down.
He does.
Into 3 types. The conversation for awareness, the conversation for choice, and the conversation for trust.
You're right.
Each one has a specific purpose and a unique set of questions that can unlock the client's potential. Okay, now you're really making me want to become a Gallwey-style coach.
All right.
Tell me more about these different types of coaching conversations.
Let's start with the conversation for awareness. This is all about helping the client get a clear picture of their current reality, what's actually happening, both internally and externally. What are they thinking, feeling, noticing? What are the facts of the situation without any judgment or interpretation?
I can see how that would be a crucial first step. It's about helping the client step back from their emotional reactions and see the situation more objectively.
Right.
So what about the conversation for choice?
Okay.
What's the focus there?
Once the client has a clear understanding of their current reality, the next step is to explore their desired outcomes.
Okay.
What do they want to create?
Right.
What are their goals and aspirations? Where do they want to go? This is where the coach helps the client clarify their vision and identify the choices that will move them in that direction.
That's about empowering them to take ownership of their future, make decisions that are aligned with their values and aspirations.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right.
So what about the conversation for trust?
Oh, boy.
That one sounds really intriguing.
This is where things get really deep.
Right.
The conversation for trust is all about helping the client access their inner resources and build confidence in their ability to succeed.
Okay.
It's about recognizing their own strength and potential, letting go of those limiting beliefs that might be holding them back, and trusting their own inner wisdom.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right?
It's like saying you have everything you need within you to achieve your goals. But I'm wondering, how do you actually cultivate that sense of trust in a coaching relationship?
Right.
It's not something you can just force, right?
Absolutely not. Trust is something that's earned over time through consistent action and demonstration of care. And in a coaching context, it's about creating that safe and supportive environment where the client feels seen, heard, and respected.
Right.
It's about letting go of judgment and control and trusting the client's inherent wisdom and capacity to find their own way.
It's such a beautiful way to approach coaching.
Yeah.
It's not about fixing people.
Right.
It's about empowering them to discover their own strength and potential.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this whole inner game philosophy can transform not only our work lives, but our relationships and our overall approach to life.
It's really about recognizing that we all have this incredible capacity for growth and transformation, and that we don't have to go it alone.
Right.
We can support each other on this journey of self-discovery and create a more fulfilling and joyful experience for ourselves and everyone around us.
I love that. Yeah. So now that we've explored these foundational concepts from Gallwey's work, the two selves, the power of choice, the importance of awareness, and the transformative potential of coaching.
Okay.
I'm really curious to hear more about how he applies these ideas to the bigger picture of our work lives.
Right.
How can we actually put this all into practice?
And create a work life that's not only successful, but also deeply meaningful and aligned with our true selves.
So how do we do that?
That's a great question.
How do we make that happen?
It leads us into some even more profound and practical insights from Gallwey's work.
Okay.
We left off with that idea of thinking like the CEO of your own amazing corporation, as Gallwey puts it.
Right.
It's a pretty powerful analogy, isn't it?
It really is. It kind of shifts the whole perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of feeling like just another employee, we're suddenly CEOs responsible for the success of our own unique ventures. But honestly, it also feels a little daunting.
Yeah.
Like, where do I even begin with this whole CEO of myself thing?
Well, just like any good CEO, you start by taking stock of your assets. What resources do you have at your disposal? What are your strengths? What makes your corporation unique?
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
So when Gallwey talks about our corporate assets, is he just talking about our skills and talents?
It's much broader than that.
Okay.
He's talking about all those inherent resources we're born with, our senses, our bodies, our incredible brains.
Right.
I mean, have you ever stopped to think about the sheer complexity of the human brain?
That's pretty amazing.
We're talking highly sophisticated equipment here.
Yeah.
Capable of incredible things.
Wow. When you put it that way, it really does make you appreciate the amazing hardware we're all walking around with.
Exactly.
But it's not just about the physical stuff, is it?
No.
There's also that whole inner landscape of emotions, qualities, and capacities.
Exactly. And Gallwey doesn't shy away from naming
those often overlooked assets.
Okay.
Things like joy, gratitude, peace, love, meaning purpose.
Wow.
Even ecstasy and tranquility.
Okay.
He's saying we have this whole spectrum of human experience built right in, ready to be accessed and utilized.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
We're so used to thinking about work in terms of skill, knowledge, and productivity.
Right.
But Gallwey is saying there's this whole other dimension of our being that we can bring to the table.
It's like he's saying, hey, you're not just a worker bee.
Right.
You're a whole human being with this vast array of resources and potential.
Yeah.
So why not bring all of yourself to work?
I love that.
Right.
But I'm also wondering, how much access do we actually have to all these resources? It's like Gallwey's handing us the keys to the kingdom, but are we even aware of all the treasures that lie within?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it gets to the heart of Gallwey's challenge.
Okay. He's asking us to take ownership of our own corporations, to really understand what we have to work with, to make conscious choices about how we utilize those resources.
So it's not just about having these resources, it's about being aware of them.
Exactly.
Choosing how we want to use them.
Yeah.
Taking back control.
And that leads us to another brilliant concept from Gallwey.
Okay.
The idea of shares in our corporation.
Shares, okay.
He asks, how many shares do you actually own?
Interesting.
Meaning, how much control do you have over your own life and decisions?
Oh, okay. I'm really intrigued by this shares analogy.
Okay.
It makes me think about how we often give away our power, sometimes without even realizing it.
Right.
So who are we giving those shares to?
Right.
And why?
Well, when Gallwey asked his seminar participants that question, they came up with a whole range of buyers. Things like approval acceptance, avoidance of conflict, love, money, security, belonging. Even things like success or control, which seem positive on the surface, can end up costing us dearly if we're not careful.
Wow, that's really eye-opening.
Right.
It makes me realize how easily we can get caught up in those external desires for validation and security, and how that can lead us to make choices that aren't truly aligned with our own values and aspirations. It's like we're trading away pieces of ourselves for something we think we need, but at what cost?
And that's where that CEO mindset comes in again.
Okay.
A good CEO is always looking out for the best interests of the company. They're not afraid to make tough decisions to negotiate to protect the company's assets.
To protect those assets.
So how can we apply that same level of care and discernment to our own lives?
It's about asking ourselves, am I getting a good deal here?
Right.
Are the things I'm striving for truly worth the price I'm paying? Am I honoring my own needs and desires?
Yeah.
Or am I just trying to please others and fit in?
Exactly. It's about reclaiming those lost shares.
Okay.
Those parts of ourselves that we've given away
right.
in exchange for approval, security, or whatever else we thought we needed.
Okay, now I'm really curious about this idea of reclaiming those lost shares.
Okay.
How do we actually do that?
Right.
In practice, Gallwey doesn't give us a step-by-step guide, does he?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of becoming aware of who we've given those shares to and why. Once we see those patterns clearly, we can start making conscious choices about how we want to move forward.
So it's about recognizing those areas where we've unconsciously given away our power and starting to take it back.
And it's not about blaming others or dwelling on the past.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for our current situation and choosing a different path. Becoming the empowered CEO of our own lives.
I love that.
Right.
But it also sounds like a pretty challenging process.
It can be.
Like, what if those buyers, those things we've given our shares to, are people we care about? Or situations we feel obligated to stay in? How do we reclaim those shares without creating conflict or damaging those relationships?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us to another helpful concept from Gallwey.
Okay.
The idea of having a board of directors.
Wait, a board of directors?
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about solo CEOs here.
Well, Gallwey suggests we think about who's on our personal board of directors. It might include mentors, trusted advisors, even aspects of ourselves that represent different values or perspectives.
So it's like having an inner circle of wisdom and support to help us navigate those tough decisions. Reclaim our power in a way that feels aligned and authentic.
And just like a real board meeting, we can schedule regular check-ins with ourselves to assess our progress, review our goals, make any necessary adjustments. Are we on track? Are we honoring our values? Are we taking care of our most valuable asset, ourselves?
I love that idea.
Right.
It's like creating a system of accountability and support to help us stay true to our own corporate mission and vision.
Exactly. But, as we're talking about all this, I'm realizing that I often struggle to even identify what my own corporate mission is. Like, what do I truly value? What am I passionate about? What do I want to contribute to the world?
Those are great questions.
They are, and I think a lot of people struggle with that sense of clarity and purpose.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and lose sight of what really matters.
Yeah.
But I think Gallwey would say that's all the more reason to hit that stocky button, create some space for reflection, and to really tune in to those deeper longings that are trying to guide us.
That makes me think about something Gallwey said.
Okay.
That really struck a chord with me.
All right.
The idea that every human being is born with an inherent ambition.
Oh, interesting.
I think we often associate ambition with negative qualities like greed and ruthlessness. But Gallwey's offering a completely different perspective.
Yeah. What's his take?
He's saying that ambition at its core is simply a desire to grow, to learn, to create, to make a difference in the world.
Okay.
It's a natural expression of our human potential. And it's something to be celebrated and nurtured.
I like that.
Not feared or suppressed.
It's like reclaiming the word ambition, giving it a positive spin. It's not about climbing the corporate ladder or accumulating wealth and power. It's about fulfilling our potential and making a meaningful contribution.
And that inherent ambition isn't limited to the workplace.
Exactly. It permeates every aspect of our lives.
Our relationships, our creative pursuits, our personal growth.
It's what drives us to learn new things, to challenge ourselves, to expand our horizons.
So it's not about denying or suppressing those desires and ambitions. It's about aligning them with our values, using them as fuel for a life of purpose and fulfillment.
Exactly. And that alignment requires a certain level of self-awareness and honesty.
Okay.
It's about asking ourselves those tough questions. What do I really want? Where does my desire come from? Is my desire trustworthy?
Whoa, those are some big questions.
They are.
And I have to admit, I'm not always sure I know the answers.
Right.
It's like there's this part of me that wants to play it safe.
Okay.
To stay within the lines, to avoid rocking the boat.
Right.
But then there's this other part of me that yearns for something more.
Yeah.
Something bigger, something that feels truly aligned with my soul's purpose.
And I think that's the tension that Gallwey's inviting us to explore. That dance between our desire for security and comfort and our longing for growth and expansion.
Yeah.
He's not saying one is better than the other.
Okay.
He's simply saying that both are part of the human experience and that true freedom comes from recognizing and honoring both of those impulses.
So it's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Between those two forces.
Yeah.
Between playing it safe and taking risks. Between staying in our comfort zones. Stepping into the unknown.
And that balance will look different for each person.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all formula.
Yeah.
It's about listening to our own inner wisdom, making choices that feel aligned and authentic for us.
I love that.
Right.
It's about trusting ourselves. Honoring our own unique path.
Totally. But as we're talking about all this, I'm also wondering how to apply these ideas in those situations where we don't have a lot of external control.
Right.
Like, what if we're stuck in a job that feels soul-crushing? Or we're dealing with a difficult boss or coworker? How do we find that sense of freedom and empowerment when the external circumstances feel so limiting?
That's such a valid question.
It is, and I think a lot of people struggle with that sense of feeling trapped or powerless.
Right.
Especially in those situations where we don't have a lot of control over the external circumstances. But Gallwey would say that even in those seemingly impossible situations, we always have a choice.
Okay, now you're really challenging my beliefs. I mean, how can you possibly have a choice when you're dealing with a toxic work environment or you're feeling completely burnt out and overwhelmed?
Well, he's not saying it's easy.
Okay.
But he is saying that we always have a choice about how we respond to those challenges, how we engage with our work, and ultimately how we experience it.
So it's not about denying the reality of those difficult situations. It's about finding a different way to relate to them, a way that empowers us rather than diminishes us.
And that different way starts with recognizing that our experience of any situation is largely determined by our internal state, by our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions.
So it's about shifting our focus from what's happening out there to what's happening in here. It's about taking ownership of our own internal experience.
You got it. And that's where those tools we talked about earlier, like the SDOP technique, that the 3 types of coaching conversations can be incredibly helpful. They give us a way to step back from the drama, shift our perspective, and choose a more empowering response.
It's like we're building a toolkit for navigating those challenging situations with greater awareness, resilience, and even a sense of humor.
Absolutely.
Because let's be honest, sometimes you just got to laugh at the absurdity of it all.
And I think Gallwey would agree that a good sense of humor is an essential asset in any CEO's toolkit.
I agree.
It helps us maintain perspective, stay grounded, find those moments of joy, even amidst the chaos.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of taking ownership of our own corporations, of recognizing our inherent resources and potential, and aligning our actions with our deepest desires and ambitions.
Exactly.
We've explored some practical tools for navigating those inevitable challenges, finding a greater sense of freedom and empowerment in our work lives.
Okay.
But I'm wondering, what about those situations where we need to collaborate with others?
Okay.
How do Gallwey's ideas apply to teamwork, leadership, and communication?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It leads us into another fascinating aspect of Gallwey's work.
Okay.
His unique perspective on coaching and leadership.
Well, I'm definitely ready to dive into that.
All right.
I have a feeling Gallwey's approach to coaching is just as radical and transformative as everything else we've discussed so far.
You're in for a treat.
Okay.
His approach to coaching is all about empowering people to find their own solutions rather than imposing answers on them. It's about creating a space for learning, growth, and self-discovery rather than focusing on judgment and correction.
Okay, I'm already hooked.
Good.
Tell me more about how Gallwey's coaching methods differ from traditional approaches.
Well, one of the key distinctions is that Gallwey's approach is not problem-focused. It's not about identifying what's wrong and trying to fix it. Instead, it's about recognizing the inherent potential in each individual and creating the conditions for that potential to unfold.
So less about fixing people. More about helping them tap into their own brilliance and creativity.
Exactly. And that shift in focus can be incredibly empowering for both the coach and the person being coached. It creates a relationship based on trust, respect, and a shared belief in the individual's capacity to grow and learn.
I can see how that kind of approach could be really transformative, especially in a workplace setting where we're often so focused on performance and results.
Totally. But I'm also wondering, how does that translate into actual coaching conversations? What does a Gallwey-style coaching session look like? Well, Gallwey uses a variety of techniques and exercises to help people tap into their own inner wisdom and resources. But one of his most powerful tools is the art of asking questions.
Okay, so it's not about giving advice, telling people what to do. It's about asking questions.
Exactly.
Like help them discover their own answers and solutions.
You got it. And the key is to ask questions that are open-ended, curious, and non-judgmental. Questions that invite the person to reflect, to explore, to connect with their own inner knowing.
So instead of saying, here's what you should do, the coach might ask, what are you noticing about this situation? Or what are some possible options you could consider?
And by asking those kinds of questions, the coach creates a space for the person being coached to step into their own power and take ownership of their own choices and decisions.
You know, it's funny how we often think of coaching as something that's only for athletes or executives. But Gallwey's saying, these principles can be applied in any relationship with our colleagues, our friends, even our family members.
He's saying that coaching is simply a way of being with others, a way of communicating that fosters growth, learning, and connection. It's about seeing the potential in others, supporting them on their journey of self-discovery.
I love that. Like we're all coaches in training, learning to listen more deeply, ask more empowering questions, and create those spaces where people feel safe to be themselves and to grow into their full potential.
And that's a really beautiful vision, isn't it?
It is.
A world where we're all supporting each other in this way, recognizing the inherent wisdom and capacity within each individual, creating a more collaborative and fulfilling experience for everyone.
This is all making me think about how we approach leadership in the workplace. We often think of leaders as those who have all the answers, tell people what to do, command and control. But Gallwey's work suggests a very different kind of leadership.
Absolutely. Gallwey would say that true leadership is not about power and control. It's about service and empowerment. It's about creating the conditions for others to thrive, to step into their own power, make their own unique contributions.
So less about being the hero leader, who swoops in to save the day. More about being the guide, the mentor, the facilitator. Who helps others discover their own strengths and solutions.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from a me focus to a we focus, from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. From a culture of competition to a culture of collaboration.
Now I'm really starting to see how this whole inner game philosophy can revolutionize the way we work and lead.
It really can.
It's about tapping into that collective intelligence, that shared wisdom and creativity that exists within any group of people.
And I think that's what makes Gallwey's work so timely and relevant today in a world that's becoming increasingly complex and interconnected. We need this kind of leadership. Leadership that's not about ego and control, but about humility, service, and empowerment.
This is all feeling very inspiring.
Good.
But I'm also wondering, how do we actually put this into practice? How do we shift from that old model of leadership to this more collaborative and empowering approach?
Well, it starts with a willingness to let go of some of those old beliefs and assumptions about leadership. We have to be willing to challenge the status quo, experiment with new approaches, and to trust that our teams and colleagues are capable of far more than we might imagine.
So it's about creating that space.
Exactly.
For people to step up, to take ownership, to contribute their unique gifts and talents. It's about letting go of the need to control everything. Trusting that the best solutions often emerge from collaboration, collective intelligence.
Exactly. And that requires a certain level of humility on the part of the leader. It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers, that we can learn from those around us, and that the best way to lead is often to step back and create space for others to shine.
I love that. It's like inverting the pyramid, putting the focus on those who are doing the work, recognizing that they often have the best insights and solutions.
And I think that's ultimately what Gallwey's work is all about. Creating a more human-centered approach to work, one that honors the inherent potential in each individual and recognizes that the best results come from collaboration, trust, and a shared sense of purpose.
This has been such a mind-expanding conversation. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of Gallwey's work. But I'm already feeling inspired to apply these ideas in my own life and work.
Good.
But as we're wrapping up this part of the deep dive, I'm also wondering, how do we integrate these concepts into the day-to-day reality of our work lives? Like, how do we find that sense of freedom and purpose amidst the deadlines, the meetings, the emails, the never-ending to-do list?
That's a great question. And it leads us into the next layer of Gallwey's wisdom. His practical tools and techniques for creating a more joyful and fulfilling work experience.
All right, I'm ready for more. Let's dive into those practical strategies for working free. It's all well and good to talk about these big ideas, but how do we actually make them a reality in our daily work lives?
Well, I think it starts by recognizing that freedom is not just about external circumstances. It's also about our internal state. Finding that sense of joy, purpose, and connection, even amidst the challenges and demands.
Of a modern workplace, that makes sense. But I got to be honest, it's not always easy to find that sense of joy. When you're feeling overwhelmed with deadlines, emails, and meetings.
Absolutely. You're right. It's not always easy. But Gallwey reminds us that we always have a choice. We can choose to be reactive, to get caught up in the stress and drama, or we can choose to be proactive, to find those moments of peace, purpose, and even playfulness within our work.
I like the sound of that.
But
how do we actually make that shift? It's like you're saying, we need to find a way to work freely, even within the constraints of a demanding job.
Exactly. And Gallwey provides some really practical tools and techniques for doing just that. Remember those AT&T telephone operators we talked about? Their job was pretty repetitive and rule-bound, but Gallwey was able to help them find more joy and meaning in their work by teaching them how to manage their internal state and find those moments of connection and learning within each call.
That's right. It's like they were able to transform a seemingly mundane task into a source of personal growth and fulfillment.
And that's what Gallwey's challenging us to do, to find those opportunities for growth and connection, even in the most unexpected places. He's saying work doesn't have to be a soul-crushing experience. It can actually be a path to self-discovery, creativity, and even joy.
I'm starting to see how this whole inner game approach can really change the game entirely.
It can.
It's not about waiting for the perfect job or the perfect circumstances. It's about finding that freedom and purpose within ourselves, no matter what we're doing.
And that kind of internal freedom can have a ripple effect on everything around us. Our relationships, our health, our overall well-being. It's about creating a life that's not just successful, and also deeply meaningful and fulfilling.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on work and life, and I'm excited to start putting these ideas into practice.
Awesome.
But before we wrap up, is there one key takeaway that you would want to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important takeaway is this. You have the power to choose your experience, no matter what the external circumstances may be. You can choose to focus on the challenges and limitations, or you can choose to focus on the opportunities and possibilities. You can choose to be reactive and stressed, or you can choose to be proactive and empowered.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's like you're saying we're not victims of circumstance.
Exactly.
We're creators of our own experience.
It all starts with awareness.
Okay.
Start paying attention to your thoughts, your beliefs, your reactions. Notice where you're giving away your power, where you're limiting yourself, where you're resisting the flow of life, and then start making those small shifts, those conscious choices that'll move you in a direction of greater freedom, joy, and fulfillment.
This has been such an inspiring and thought-provoking conversation.
I'm glad.
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools and perspectives to bring to my work. And I'm excited to see what unfolds as I start putting these ideas into practice.
Well, keep us posted.
I will. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And
remember, this is just the beginning of the journey. There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discover about ourselves and the world around us.
And we'll be here to guide you along the way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the inner game of work.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time. For another adventure in exploring the ideas that matter.